Mondas to Telos, to Planet 14 and the Army of Ghosts. From the rift and through time itself, there has always been the Cybermen. Excellent. Yes, the formidable foe, the zombie in a suit, the creatures behind a shell. They invaded and fought the people of the realm of stories. They converted the people of parallel worlds. They took over galaxies and conquered universes. And more than anything, they became one of the Doctor's greatest enemies. They took over a whole planet with a news broadcast, slowly integrating themselves into the population, behind the scenes on Telos. A planet so peaceful, so similar to Earth, and yet also quite vulnerable. They conquered in masses, slowly showing the horrors of their true nature behind the shells. And all this in a matter of time. That's all it ever took for the Cybermen. Time. An endless unraveling conquest throughout the galaxy. No wonder they became one of the greatest conquering races of all of the universe. But you don't have to take my word for that. No. But you can listen to the Cybermen. A Big Finish audio. And more than that, even more. They didn't just take over Telos. They also spread further amongst the galaxy. A big example of their ascension throughout the galaxy is the Sword of Orion. A collapse in the galaxy where vast stretches of human beings dare not go. The Cybermen fought cyborgs and other robots for years, trying to figure out a way to win the war, but the war was endless and heartless and uncaring. Then an original Mondasian variant, named the Silver Turk, crash lands into the life of Mary Shelley and her friends, causing them all sorts of havoc as the Doctor faces down against one of his greatest foes of all time. He explains to the people of the time that the Turk is not to be trusted, and that it is indeed the most evil thing in the universe. But they don't believe him. They believe it's harmless, just something that fell from the sky and can now play an instrument. Emotion was not the only thing the Cybermen could take away from people. Love. One of the most impeccable things, one of the most unbridged, unexplainable feelings. And it destroyed it. A planet savaged by people who couldn't understand others' identities, and so they locked them in a suit and decided to pretend they didn't exist. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of the universe of all identities and more, and welcome to another Doctor Who review. Today's review is World Enough and Time, and the Doctor Falls. So without further ado, grab your sonic screwdrivers, grab anything you can to hold back the Cybermen, because we are about to dive into one of the most heartbreaking stories of all of Who. Our story begins on a spaceship on the edge of a black hole. The Doctor has tasked his oldest friend in the universe to take her very first mission alongside comic relief and exposition. The pair of them stand next to her as they watch her gravitas around the room, stating, "I'm Doctor Who." She then mocks the fact that this is apparently the Doctor's real name. The Doctor begins to eat crisps in the background, and A little rant begins as she points out that she doesn't like being monitored whilst eating crisps. Then, suddenly, the atmosphere changes as a lift begins to come up the shaft and towards the bridge. Elsewhere on a screen, a blue man begins to rant over the monitor, pointing out that they only come for human beings, so someone on the flight deck must be human. Missy, points out that she's not human. Neither is Nardo. So, the blue man, confused, begins to point his gun around, very scared. Eventually, Bill admits to the fact that she is the only human on the flight deck. In a couple flashbacks, we go back to finding out the fact of that the Doctor is trying everything he can to help Missy become good. He believes in his own hearts that she has the ability to, and that is the reason why he has given her this mission. Bill disagrees and believes that she is very scared of Missy and constantly reminds the Doctor that whatever happens, just don't get me killed. The Doctor then mocks Bill, pointing out that you're only human. I mean, seriously, we have two hearts. Humans only have one, and you haven't even got a backup. Bill laughs this off, but, ironically, this becomes a reality as we flash back forward and find out that Bill has been shot through the chest. Bill survives this attack, but just barely, as the people who come up through the lift with masks over their face have taken her down to the hospital below for her to be repaired. But little does she know, in the way that she's been prepared will be foreboding for what is to come next. Meanwhile, upstairs, the Doctor and his friends have been trying to devise a plan in order to get down the lift and back to Bill. But little do they know that time is against them, and soon the Doctor realizes that time has been playing a trick ever since. The blue man is asked about the crew. He points out that 20 of them went downstairs, but none of them came back up. Then, by the time he checked the monitors, all of the humans below have doubled since they last went down. The Doctor explains this is because of time and physics and how one end of the ship moves faster than the other. This in turn means that the 20 that went down to repair the ship obviously got on with their lives and done other things rather than coming back up to the surface. That is why they have never returned to the flight deck, and also because the flight deck moves very slowly. Bill is then introduced to a character called Razor. Razor is a sneaky but mischievous janitor who seems to work in the hospital. Bill lives with him for 10 years, waiting for the Doctor to come back. All the while, a subconscious message the Doctor left in her head is constantly winding her up. "Wait for me," he says, as his ghostly presence lurks the hall of everywhere that Bill goes. Bill begins to ask questions about the chest unit she's been fitted with. She asks if she will ever be able to leave the hospital. Matron points out to Bill that she can never leave the hospital because the heart unit will stop working. She believes that the matron is just trying to wind her up, and so, one day, she leaves the hospital with Razor to experience the city properly. She begins to realize that the place that she is living in, outside the hospital, is a dark and dismal utopia, broken and bitter. The clouds filled with smoke. People are starving. At first, Bill doesn't understand what the whole hospital point is, but soon she comes to learn that the hospital is developing technology in order to maintain the people below to live longer. Little does she know the horror behind the cure. After her heart stops working through the machine that's been fed into Bill's chest, Bill eventually ends up returning to the hospital, and Razor tricks her into walking into the operating theatre. A doctor and the matron are waiting for her, preparing her for the next stage of her conversion. But little does she know that she's going to be fully converted into a Cyberman. Eventually, the Doctor, Nardo, and Missy arrive downstairs in hopes of finding Bill. The group split into two, and Missy begins to look through the archives to figure out exactly where the ship came from.
Soon she realizes that the planet that the ship came from is very alike to Earth, a twin, in fact. And soon she realizes that the ship is from Mondas. As she comes to this discovery, Razor confronts her, pointing out that she has done something to Bill. And to Missy's knowledge, at that current point in time, she hasn't done anything to Bill. But soon it begins to dawn on her. Meanwhile, Nardo and the Doctor are looking around the operation theatre. Soon they discover a Mondasian Cyberman hidden away in a closet, and as they begin to approach it, the Cyberman begins to move. The Doctor begins to ask the Cyberman where Bill is. He's confused and unsure what to do. He points out that the Cyberman is linked to a kinetic connection of networks, so it should be able to locate Bill. The Cyberman eventually points out that it is Bill, and in fact, it waited for him a very, very long time. The horror begins to fill the Doctor's face. He soon realizes exactly what's happened. He watches as a tear streams down the Cyberman's face as the two masters reveal themselves. Missy standing on one side and the John Sim Master on the other. Both masters chuckle as they watch the Doctor watch in horror as he looks at his best friend. After their giggles and laughs, both masters go to attack the Doctor. One master in particular, the Sim Master, believes that he can overpower the Doctor, but luckily, they didn't realise what the Doctor's real intention was. The Sim Master hits the Doctor and hits him against a console unit. In doing so, he provides the Doctor with the exact time and potential to do exactly what he wanted to do in the first place. But little would they realise later that he had changed the one heart to two hearts. This in turn caused a kerfuffle for the Masters. The Doctor laughs and gloats as he watches the two Masters bickering over their power and supremacy over the Cybermen. They both enjoy watching as the Cybermen of different conversions and different generations begin to rise up, but little do they know that these Cybermen will eventually be coming for them. They begin to ask the Doctor exactly what to do, and the Doctor begins to point out that the only way for them to survive is to free him, as he is the only answer to them stopping so many Cybermen. As the Doctor, Cybermen, Bill, Nardo, and the Masters escape the lower levels, they find themselves on an upper level with a whole colony that have been fighting off Cybermen for years. They have known about the horrors on the city below, and so they have moved up to the upper floors in hope of escape. But little do they know that because of the Doctor's interference with the ship, the Cybermen below will be breaking their way up in order to annihilate them and destroy them once and for all, and convert the children that are to be the next generation. The Master mockingly points out that his next incarnation will be a woman. He asks Bill, the Cyberman, about any tips, and Bill decides to ignore him. Throughout this whole story, Bill is unsure of what to do. She is confused and very scared, especially as she never wanted to be a Cyberman in the first place. The Doctor points out that there's nothing he can do, and Bill eventually accepts this fact, and instead, in turns, helps the Doctor to fight off the remainder of the Cybermen as they approach the upper level. The Doctor, Bill, and the Masters discover a lift. They all in turn open the lift in hopes of finding a new escape to escape that level of the ship. One of the Masters points out that they could use it to go down, but little did he know that one of the Cybermen would be coming up. They destroy one of the Cybermen, but in turn this alerts all the other Cybermen that there are people on the upper level preparing to fight. Nardo realizes that if he activates certain pressure points of the wiring underneath the surface of the area that they are covering, that it will explode and implode. This gives them an advantage against the Cyberman. But little does Nardo realize that the Doctor will eventually steal the information from him and tell him to go upstairs and help the humans survive long enough, at least to live a happy and enjoyable life. Nardo points out that he will name a really bad pig after him and a really bad town just out of spite. He also points out that he is very upset that Bill will also be staying. The Doctor then eventually goes to confront both Masters in hopes that they will help him to destroy the Cybermen. The Sim Master points out that it is hopeless and that nothing can destroy the Cybermen. No matter how many times they try, they will just keep coming back stronger and better than before. The Doctor then points out that he is not trying to win, but instead just trying to delay the inevitable. He is trying to help people survive, maybe not for long, maybe not forever, but it's just kind. The two Masters look at him in absolute awe and just can't be bothered to listen to a word he says. The pair then divulge off into the forest, one Master going down on the lift and the other one staying up. Well, or so it seems. Missy asks the Sim Master to come closer, and she stabs him in turn to trigger a regeneration. The Sim Master then realizes this is exactly how he will turn into Missy. But little does he know that there is more to the story than meets the eye. Missy then points out that she's going to stand with the Doctor and help him. The Sim Master doesn't agree with this, as he believes that the Master's whole purpose is to destroy and cause chaos. He decides to shoot her with a blast of his laser sonic. He even points out that it was the full blast, so she will not be able to regenerate. He then laughs ironically, as the pair both share in a gathering of the thought that they killed themselves. They said it's ironic, but, as we later learn in Big Finish, this would not be the end. Doctor begins his last stand, pointing out every single Cyberman that he comes into contact with: Telos, Mondas, Planet 14, and many more. And in the process of gloating about it, he begins to set off the detonation for the platform. One of the Mondasian Cybermen shoots him in the back, and as they do, he says, "I am the Doctor." The Mondasian Cyberman says, "Doctors are not required." "I'm not just a doctor. I'm the Doctor. The original, you might say." Then a detonation goes off, blowing up the whole platform with it. The Doctor watches up and calls out, "Why are there never any stars?" he says, looking up. He collapses for a while. Meanwhile, the only Cyberman left still functioning, well, half functioning, is Bill. Bill stands watching over the Doctor, her sorrow and her cries beginning to break through the suit. Eventually, she is no longer part of the suit, as her girlfriend Heather returns to save her from the tragedy. The pair return to the TARDIS, leaving the Doctor to guard the universe and save people and go on doing what they do. Heather shows Bill around the universe, and eventually the Doctor wakes up. But, in angerment of what is happening, the Doctor refuses to regenerate, and this passes over into the next story. So, World Enough in Time and The Doctor Falls. What do I give it out of 10? Well, both stories are very solid. Both stories have a very good conclusion, and one has an absolutely brilliant cliffhanger with Bill being turned into a Cyberman. And the characterization of both Masters is brilliant, but I have to say this, but because I want more Masters, I may be being very greedy in this. I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10. Just purely because I feel like this story could have so easily had the Beavers Master, Jacoby, Roberts, you name it. But I do think this is a good start to introducing multi-master stories into the TV show, especially as we do know in like comics and audios, it has happened, so it's not unheard of. And as I said, for that reason, I give it a 7 out of 10. But just saying, future multi-master stories, yes please. Thank you everyone for watching, and we will see you in another Doctor Who review. Until then, keep being Whovians, keep being mad, keep eating jelly babies.
Goodbye.